Chuck Norris is an American legend, six-time world karate champion, star of over 20 films, a man who inspired millions to believe that discipline, faith, and hard work can overcome anything. In his autobiography, he wrote about his roots, Irish and Cherokee, a heritage he was proud of. But when genealogists traced the records, they discovered something that millions of American families share. A story passed down through generations that doesn't quite match the documents. This isn't about one man. It's about a phenomenon that shaped how Americans see themselves and why so many families tell the exact same story. Chuck Norris never shied away from his roots. In his 2004 memoir, Against All Odds, he wrote, quote, "Genetically speaking, I am equal parts Irish and Native American," quote. That line sits at the heart of his family story, a story he repeated with pride throughout his life. In a 1997 television interview, he spoke warmly of his father's Irish heritage and his grandmother, whom he described as a full-blooded Cherokee. For Chuck, this wasn't just an interesting fact. It was a point of identity, woven into the fabric of who he believed himself to be. He credited his mother, Wilma Scarberry, with passing down tales of Irish ancestors from County Cork. His father, Ray Norris, was said to descend from Cherokee lineage, a claim that echoed through family gatherings, newspaper profiles, and fan conversations for decades. Chuck's words were always delivered with sincerity, not as a boast, but as a tribute to the people who shaped him. These stories carried weight. They explained the stubbornness, the toughness, and the sense of belonging that Chuck felt. For millions of Americans, especially those from the South and Midwest, a family legend like this was as common as Sunday dinner or a favorite old song. The details might shift, but the pride remained. Chuck's version of the tale was no different. He honored it, repeated it, and let it become part of his public legend. As the years went by, the story followed him from small-town Oklahoma to Hollywood, always close to his heart, always told in his own words. Catherine Allen's voice brings the evidence into sharp focus. The 1900 and 1910 federal census records for both sides of Chuck Norris's family tell a consistent story. Each relative, father, mother, grandparents, is listed as white. There is no box for Cherokee, no mark for Native ancestry. The 1910 birth certificate for Ray Norris, Chuck's father, shows both parents' names and Oklahoma as the place of birth. Again, the race field reads white. A 1938 marriage license from Texas records Wilma Scarberry, Chuck's mother, and her parents, James Scarberry and Sarah Johnson. All are identified as white, with no hint of tribal affiliation. The paper trail stretches even further back. An 1842 land deed from Pulaski County, Kentucky, documents a transaction involving William Scarborough, an Irish immigrant from County Cork. This deed, preserved in county archives, grounds the family's Irish roots in black and white legal ink. Across every official document, census sheets, birth certificates, marriage records, land deeds, the same pattern repeats. Not one entry, not one annotation points to Cherokee ancestry. There are no tribal notations, no indication of a full-blooded Native American ancestor. Instead, the paperwork describes a family moving westward through Kentucky, Mississippi, Texas, and Oklahoma, always recorded in the language of the era as white Americans. These facts don't erase family stories, but they do stand in contrast to them, inviting a closer look at how cherished legends and official records can travel such different paths. Across the country, a single story repeats itself in millions of homes. The tale of a Cherokee ancestor, often a grandmother or even a so-called princess. Chuck Norris's family wasn't alone in passing down this legend. According to the 2010 U.S. Census, 819,105 Americans identified as having Cherokee ancestry. But when you look at the official enrollment lists of the three federally recognized Cherokee nations, the number drops to around 330,000. That leaves nearly 500,000 people whose belief in their Cherokee roots exists only in family lore or on a family tree website, not in tribal records. The gap between these numbers is more than a statistical oddity. It's a window into how identity and memory work in America. On genealogy websites, the Cherokee grandmother appears in countless branches, sometimes with little more than a name and a story. Historian James Mooney once wrote that the Cherokee were the most claimed ancestry in the country, a kind of national myth passed from one generation to the next. For many, including Chuck, the story wasn't just a detail, it was a source of pride, a way to belong to something larger than themselves. The legend of the Cherokee princess did not appear by accident. In the decades after the Trail of Tears, as families rebuilt lives across a changing South, newspapers and memoirs began to romanticize the idea of a noble native ancestor. By the 1840s, Southern editors were publishing stories about chiefs' daughters, casting them as exotic figures who brought honor to white families. The word princess slipped in, borrowed from European fairy tales and Victorian misunderstandings of native leadership. Cherokee society had no royal titles, but the label offered a sense of status, a way to claim a distinguished lineage when old social orders were upended by war and emancipation. After the Civil War, the story gained new power. For families facing the loss of privilege or grappling with the uncertainties of Reconstruction, a Cherokee ancestor became a badge of belonging, proof of deep roots in American soil. Sometimes, the myth served as a shield, quietly masking African ancestry at a time when racial boundaries were rigidly policed. The story could be passed down in a whisper or celebrated at the dinner table, always adapting to the needs of the moment. Through press clippings, family Bibles, and oral tradition, the princess became a fixture in the American imagination, blending pride, longing, and the hope of restoration into a single, enduring tale. Millions of Americans have sent off DNA kits hoping to confirm a family legend, often the story of a Cherokee ancestor. But when the results come back, the numbers tell a different story. According to large-scale studies by consumer genetics companies, about 70% of people who check the box for Cherokee ancestry receive less than 1% Native American DNA in their results. The gap between expectation and reality leaves many people puzzled, and sometimes disappointed. Kim Tallbear, a leading scholar on genetics and identity, puts it plainly: there is no DNA test to prove you are Native American. The science behind these kits can estimate where some ancestors might have lived centuries ago, but it cannot pinpoint ties to a specific tribe like the Cherokee. Genetic markers for Native ancestry are broad, often shared across many indigenous groups, and shaped by centuries of migration. For the Cherokee Nation, citizenship is not about DNA, it is about documented descent from ancestors on the Dawes rolls, a process rooted in history and community, not a cheek swab. For families like Chuck Norris's and for so many others, DNA testing cannot settle the question. The story endures, not because of a lab result, but because it speaks to a sense of belonging and pride. The search for identity, it turns out, is more complicated and more human than any genetic code can reveal. The Dawes rolls remain the final word on tribal citizenship for the Cherokee Nation. Every name, every family line was carefully recorded between 1898 and 1914. A search for Norris, Scarberry, or any immediate ancestor on the Cherokee lists comes up empty. There is no Norris or Scarberry enrolled as Cherokee, no ancestor matching Chuck's family in the official records. The story takes a turn, though, on the Choctaw Dawes roll. There, a John Norris appears, listed as mixed under the Choctaw Nation, not Cherokee. This is not a technicality. For the Cherokee, only documented descent from a Dawes enrollee qualifies a person for tribal citizenship. The records are clear. The Norris family's ancestry, as documented, does not intersect with the Cherokee rolls. Instead, it points to a different chapter of Native American history, one rooted in the Choctaw Nation, not the story Chuck was told. Chuck Norris's story is one of grit, not genealogy. Born in 1940 in Ryan, Oklahoma, he grew up in poverty, the son of a struggling mechanic and a mother who worked any job she could find. The hardships of his early years shaped the steel behind his quiet demeanor. At 18, Chuck joined the Air Force, serving as an air policeman and discovering martial arts while stationed in South Korea. That first black belt was just the beginning. By 1967, he had claimed the World Professional Middleweight Karate Championship, a title he would hold 6 consecutive times. Hollywood soon called, and in 1972 he stepped onto the big screen, eventually becoming a global icon. But his reach didn't end with fame. In 1995, he founded Kickstart, a program dedicated to teaching discipline and confidence to at-risk youth. Chuck Norris's legacy is built on determination, resilience, and a lifelong commitment to lifting others up. Today, more than 819,000 Americans call themselves Cherokee, yet only about 330,000 are enrolled citizens, and no DNA test can certify Native identity. Chuck Norris once wrote, "Genetically speaking, I am equal parts Irish and Native American." In truth, it was never ancestry that made him legendary. It was character. Share your story below.